As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers and HealingYourself.life viewers. We have an opportunity tonight to speak with a first-time guest. Malay Panchal is the CEO of Pure Global Cannabis, Inc. He's here with us from Canada. Malay, thank you for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers and HealingYourself.life.
Donegan, thanks for having me.
We've had a couple other experts on talking about the cannabis industry, and we've also had a medical doctor, Dr. Ernie Murakami from Canada as well, talking about very promising signs and indications of the application of cannabis to healing and treating the symptoms of some severe and even chronic ailments. And we'd like to circle back with you on those questions in a few minutes. But first, I just wanted you to give us a quick, you are an industry insider here as part of a very young and growing industry. If you could give us where we are at in the legalization process, both in the U.S. and Canada, in terms of progress, since that seems to be a dramatic factor that will impact the growth of this industry.
Absolutely, Donegan. I can't speak to the U.S. regulations as much as Canada, because that is our area of expertise, obviously, especially at the onset here. But I will tell you, with Canada, the medical marijuana laws here came into place back in 2001 when the Supreme Court realized through some action by an epileptic patient that was found having cannabis plants, and took the regulators to court with this, and the courts found that he had required cannabis for his life, and from there ensued a new time where the Health Canada basically mandated the government to find a way to get patients safe access to medical cannabis. For the first several years, there was a program called the MMAR program, which gave access to some medical patients through an application, a very lengthy application process through the government, 6 pages, and you had to find a doctor that would agree to it. And then you could either buy it or grow it or what have you, and it didn't work very well. About 40,000 patients enrolled in that. And then came in 2013 the MMPR, the Medical Marijuana for Medical Purposes Regulations, and that's when I discovered this opportunity. I'm a pharmacist by trade, and I've known about the cannabis sector being one of the largest underground black market industries out there that is unregulated, and it was a matter of time, I thought, and I didn't think I'd actually see it in my lifetime, certainly, but when I read the regulations, soon discovered, hey, the entire new sector is being born here, and thus began our process of putting an application in, and 4 years later we received our license. Regulations in the U.S. are a little bit different. In Canada, we have federal sanctioned regulations that allow for commercialization of the product on the medical side and soon on the rec side. In the U.S., it's a little bit different. Federally speaking, it's still illegal. It's still classified as a Schedule I drug. Can't do any research much on it. However, there are a number of states, as you're aware, that have gone medical, upwards of 30 states that have medical laws now for cannabis, which is outstanding. And then several states that have gone full recreation. Colorado, Alaska, California, of course, is the latest, and a growing list. So the dominoes are falling, the tide has turned, and I think the ship has sailed in terms of it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. But a matter of time until the U.S. regulators catch up as well. But until then, we're unfortunately staying away from the U.S. market.
Well, you touched a couple of chords that are very close to home for me. Dealing with a serious inflammatory bowel disease earlier in life, I was prescribed a therapy which was extremely effective, 100% natural, no side effects, called TSO, if anybody wants to look that up. Came out of some research out of the University of Iowa. But the initial application, you had to find a doctor who'd prescribe it, you had to find a pharmacist who'd order it, had to come from a foreign country, had to fill out all these forms. It was a very laborious process, very difficult. Now you can just go on ovamed.de and order it up over the counter yourself with no prescription or anything. So having access to stuff that's from nature, that can help make you better, can be such a game changer, such a life changer for people.
Well, then again, cannabis is an ancient medicine that's been around for thousands and thousands of years. When you do medical research and see actually the physiological receptors that are involved in the cannabinoids acting on the endocannabinoid system, receptors take about 10,000 years to develop in the human body. So the fact that we have particular receptors for cannabinoids in the body suggests that it's probably been around in our society for tens of thousands of years. Recorded history goes back 2800 BC in China. Only the last 100 years or so has been kept from the human population for various reasons, which we can get into.
Well, another thing that our viewers tend to be quite concerned about is systemic risk and economic risk. In fact, that's one of the main taglines of our channel, is helping you be aware and prepared. And part of that preparedness means looking at eventualities. What's the plan A, but what's the downside? What's the plan B? And a lot of people have been watching the stock markets over the past more than a decade and seen the longest or second longest bull market in the history of the stock market, and are concerned about inflated valuations there. But as they look to the potential of an upcoming recession, and we've certainly seen a number of indicators that indicate that we may be signaling a recession is in the cards in the foreseeable future, recessions don't affect all markets equally, and they don't affect all companies within markets equally. So the cannabis industry is a particularly young and growing industry, we understand. Can you talk to us about whether you believe that the cannabis industry is in such a rapid growth phase that it's essentially recession-proof, and what would you look to help bolster that decision, that view of yours?
Well, remember, we had a long way to come back from. I mean, the 2008 downturn that went out to 2011 was a considerable cliff that the global economies fell off of, and the climb back has been long and onerous, but it's still perhaps a ways to go. It's really hard to judge. Having said that, certainly these things are cyclical, and I love to say that cannabis is a recession-proof. But if there's such a thing, I think these are probably one of the few sectors that are. Reason being is, number one, in terms of Canada, this is the first country that out of the G7 and modern countries that actually have commercialized the product for export purpose and beyond. Already 20 countries and growing are looking for medical cannabis products that have regulations for cannabis, and there's a growing list of conditions that are best treated by cannabis. Certain epilepsies, certain migraines, many neurological diseases. We know chronic pain can be very benefited from cannabis use. All in all, 80 clinically proven and hundreds potentially more. So the opportunity is really, this is just a nascent industry that has just started burgeoning, and it's quite a long ways before it'll be sort of a societal, normalized product, which ultimately will be an international product, very akin to your normal everyday products. Pretty soon it'll be on retail shelves in all shapes and forms. And so we're very much in the very early stages of this industry. Even in Canada, we're still only dispensing or distributing dried flower or very basic cannabis oil or capsules. Yep. There's still no regulations for actually the finished products. Even vape pens are regulated against. That's all going to be coming down the pipeline very soon. And our focus really is what we call Cannabis 3.0 with the CPG products, your finished goods that ultimately will be on retail shelves as well.
I have a little personal testimony. Just 2 weeks ago, we broadcast an interview here with Dr. Ernie Murakami that I mentioned, and he was touting the potential benefits of cannabis oil, and it is available at our local health food stores in the state that I live in, and we obtained some, and my wife and I are being treated for chronic Lyme disease and candidiasis, and went ahead and took a little bigger dose than the starter dose that he recommended, and got a dramatic response, which my wife told me reminded her only as much of when I first got the contracted the Lyme in the first place. And actually, that's considered an extremely beneficial sign in the treatment of chronic Lyme, is that the treatments which bring back the original symptoms the strongest are the ones which are unmasking the survival forms of the spirochetes, these bacteria that are in your body, so that your immune system can recognize them and deal with them, and it's the fallout of that battle that then you experience as a Herxheimer reaction. So I had a very dramatic experience that told me this stuff is more effective than a lot of the other stuff I've been trying to take. So now I got to just do it in smaller baby steps. But it really was remarkable to me to see that proof so quickly right after having talked to Dr. Murakami. So I'm really excited about the potentials for cannabis-based treatments for diseases that have been languishing, without effective and low-risk treatment for too long. So that's a personal story.
Absolutely. Cannabis is a potent product. There's what we call an entourage effect. Where today I think we've identified about 108 cannabidiols altogether. THC and CBD, of course, being the two most prevalent, but the list goes well beyond that. And there's also terpenes that we're discovering have a more of a modulation effect and quite a strong physiological effect on a lot. So there's an entourage effect, and they've tried to make bullets out of cannabis. Certain drug companies have certain products that are out on the market that have been derived from cannabis products, but unlike pharmaceuticals, which are often one molecule that are having their effect, this is a combined effect of the various compounds that are being introduced to the body, and that's very hard to replicate. And the potency goes without saying, just like the effects that you've had, and it goes much beyond that, to the extent that I've heard of cancer patients that are using this product for nausea, for discomfort, for pain, with lots of very positive results, and in some cases, oddly enough, we see remission of the tumors.
Right,
and,
that's right. Yeah, Dr. Murakami showed us a couple, both his own and another subject's radiography that showed the tumor reducing in size when treated with CBD oil, that sort of thing.
Very interesting, actually. If you go to the U.S. National Government Cancer website and you do a little research and a little digging in there, you'll see that they're conducting my studies on THC and cannabidiols, and they are actually finding anti-tumor properties. And so the U.S. government is now actually beginning to admit, in places, although they still think it's a Schedule 1 THC Schedule 1 with no medicinal value, but that's all going to be debated very soon, I'm sure, in the U.S. So it's a changing time, and certainly this is a very potent drug that has benefits across numerous medical conditions, also what we call wellness conditions. We don't just see cannabis as just a medical product. Obviously, there's the adult use, which we like, or others refer to recreational. But there's a vast majority of patients that actually use cannabis on a regular basis for not necessarily medical conditions, but just feeling better, feeling more focused, allowing them to have less anxiety, better sleep. And there's a discovery that the endocannabinoid system is actually deficient in many ways. We are actually deficient in cannabidiols, and cannabis can be sort of a solution. And I see CBD actually being taken as a nutraceutical, nutritional supplement very soon, along with your vitamin C and your multis. It's coming because there's a lot of preventative benefits of this product. We've seen reduction in Alzheimer's plaque formation and a growing list. So it's a very exciting time ahead.
This is before we get into talking more about moving from a general industry discussion into talking a little bit about more yourself, your background, and your company. I just wanted to let everybody know that there's a free research report that's at futuremoneytrends.com/pure, P-U-R-E. So futuremoneytrends, all one word, .com/P-U-R-E. It's got a lot more information in there than we were able to put into this interview. So that's a place to get free, unfiltered information. And but if you could talk to us a little bit more about yourself and your background. You mentioned you have a pharmacist training. Can you talk about the other people that are involved in pure formulas and where you guys come from?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, I'm a pharmacist by training, and when I first entered this sector, the Canadian government had few options in terms of how they were going to give out licenses, and there was really no prerequisite in terms of the profession that you were in. And it's actually quite a detriment in the beginning, and I think they had to do what they had to do. But realizing that, listen, this is a drug or a product that's being treated like a pharmaceutical. When it comes to the regulations, it is simply a pharmaceutical product and the way that it's treated and introduced to the public. And really, it would be the best idea to have those that are really qualified and trained to both make medicines, research them, also educate people on how to use them, and also understand how they're affecting the body. And there are interactions that cannabis possesses with certain drugs, but being a pharmacist and having understood the whole healthcare system and the delivery and the education, I felt this was something that myself, I had a responsibility to, in someone that's introducing the safety of products and helping the public understand on safety use. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm just talking a bit more. I'm an entrepreneur by nature. I come from a family of industrialists. I had my first startup when I lived in Silicon Valley for a year in '99. I moved back to Toronto and launched my B2B logistics platform, which was used by a few wholesalers. So that was my first foray into the startup world. After that, I went into a community practice where, after doing some feasibility studies, I discovered that the baby boomers and seniors were looking for more service, and they were looking for more holistic or natural medicine options. And that was a very successful operation, and we maybe would have stayed in that if it were not for huge cuts that the government installed in 2010. Went on to industry and clinical trials, automation and branding, where I discovered and had an opportunity to gain deep insight into the branding technologies and methodologies of the biggest marketers in the world right now, which are the brand pharma, and that all really prepared me for this industry right here. And my experiences and skills have culminated in what I am set out to do here, and really what I'm setting out to do with this industry is, this is a product that's coming into the public, and there's a lot of different types of people that are out there in developing these businesses. My interest is really introducing people to a trusted brand, a brand that they can really go to and rely upon, ones that aren't going to cut the corners ever. We're never going to, try to do something just for the profit. This is about the people. This is about delivering honest, good medicine to those that need it, or the consumers in the adult legalization side. So that means making sure that all our product is untainted with any pesticides or any contaminants or any disease for that matter, and also using a very strong acumen in terms of our production processes and our packaging, and our entire organization really is focused on making a positive difference in the lives that we're going to touch. So that's a lot about me. I assembled a world-class team of professionals. One of the first people I hired, I wasn't going to grow cannabis, and nor am I an expert about growing. So I found the strongest horticulture professional that I could find. Nader is a master's in biotechnology and a PhD level in plant physiology. Has worked in many world-class facilities around the world, in Japan, China, the Middle East, Europe, and Canada, where he has built very large-scale commercial facilities. He's also got patents and awards in unique methodologies of a higher potency and higher output or throughput for horticulture products. And he's really passionate about bringing the science of horticulture and commercial horticulture into the cannabis industry. You have to remember, cannabis was grown basically in basements or in the cottage industry, or not really modern commercial methods have been introduced, and that's what we're really looking to bring. So we are going to be experts in the product, but we're also going to be experts in the propagation of distribution and branding. So we've brought on a very strong brand manager, a VP of brand strategy, Rachel Collick. She has deep insights in the cannabis sector, being a patient herself and having dedicated her life to branding and marketing in the cannabis sector. And we're very excited about having her on our team. Beyond that, we have several pharma execs. We have a CFO that comes from public pharma companies. We have a digital professional who has come from agency. I have my general manager is a master's in agriculture engineering and an MBA who's built large agriculture facilities as well. Basically, we're bringing best practices from other industries into the cannabis sector, and that's an opportunity we have to develop a scalable venture that we can replicate in various regulated markets.
I was thinking back when you mentioned your pharmaceutical background, pharmacist background, that for years and years and years, my wife and I have relied on in our own home and in our family of 5 children and now 4 grandchildren and 1 on the way, to when we're worried about drug interactions or we're worried about dosing, that kind of thing, and especially if it's after hours, we always reach out to a pharmacist. We found such reliable help from pharmacists, and they're just generally very thoughtful, very disciplined and very thorough in their explaining things, and just it's a refreshing way of getting treated by somebody who actually puts you first, and that's not always the case in many other aspects of the modern medical system, but it certainly has been ours when dealing with pharmacists. And then something else you just mentioned. I was thinking about the name of your company, because you've mentioned some of the trends in the industry and some of the team that you assembled. I noticed the name of your company, Pure Global Cannabis. So you've talked about purity, but you haven't talked about the global nature of it. Could you give us a little insight into how much opportunity you see in the export market, for example?
Absolutely. So a lot of people ask about the coming legalization of cannabis in Canada when it comes for adult legal use, or some call it recreational, which we don't like to refer to. It's more of a wellness product when we're looking at it. Even though the adult rec or legalization that's coming October 17th in Canada is going to represent a 8 to 10-fold increase in the legal market for cannabis products, the medical industry really is the only product that you can export around the world when it comes to product international distribution and so forth. Reason being is there's no other recreational countries around the world that have the laws like Canada. Medically speaking, it falls under the same umbrella as pharmaceuticals do, and as long as you produce the product in certain regulated environment that meets certain standards, and the standard that I'm talking about is a GMP standard, which is good manufacturing practice, which requires you to spend extra in making sure your facility is designed in a particular format, that you have very strong standard operating procedures, that your staff is very trained, and you have very strong sanitation practices that can uphold the quality of the product. And if you look at the global medical market, it is Canada is a very small market. If you look at it, 35 million people, a tenth the size of the United States. Even though recreation is there or adult use, when you look at the global medical market, it is vastly larger than the Canadian market. And that's why we are Pure Global Cannabis. We are looking at this from an international vantage. We are looking at properties already in South America. We're looking at entering in the European markets very soon. Germany, for example, has over 80 million people. They have legal cannabis medical laws there. You can get cannabis at your local pharmacy there with a prescription. However, they have nothing to sell you because the shelves are empty. They have to rely upon Canada and the Netherlands to export to them. And I get a call every week from Germany. When are you sending us product? So like this, there's a growing number of countries that are looking to Canada to provide clean cannabis or clean Canadian cannabis, developing a regulated framework that will enable them to police and the production. Takes years, and it takes money, and takes economic difficulties. So it makes it just easier for them to import the product that they would need, especially for the next number of years. And so we see tremendous opportunity globally. Asia is going to be coming online very soon as well, and we want to be in all the major markets, and that's the opportunity Canadian companies have right now, being at the forefront of this sector.
Earlier on, I mentioned that one of the things that our viewers are often concerned about is systemic risk and economic risk specifically. So the viability economically and financially of an individual company that they'd want to follow is of primary interest as well. Can you tell us a little bit about, and it's funny because we have expert after expert on our channel talking to our viewers about reducing personal debt and increasing cash or other real sound investments that will survive and hold their value in times of downturn. What is the financial strength of your company, and how do you measure that?
So we are a debt-free company, very well capitalized with over $10 million in our bank at the moment, and we just got out of the gate. So we just went public literally yesterday. A very exciting time for us. And the analogy I like to use is we've just the ship has just been let out into the water, and we're just casting sail now, waiting for a good wind to catch, and hopefully we'll be off to the races soon enough. We employ a very lean methodology in all our operations, and looking to develop a sustainable business with differentiation, which will allow us to not only compete on the grand scheme of things, but utilizing acumen where we're spending wisely, expanding, because currently it's a bit of a land grab. So you have a lot of our peers really spending lots and lots of money in these vast, expansive footprints. However, we see some challenges that they're going to face in managing those large footprints, especially given that the laws are such that the cost of the product on a wholesale basis is going to collapse dramatically over the next couple of years, just like as you've seen in Colorado. So we're not investing as much in large square footage that's very capital intensive, and then you have to manage all that. And in the end, if you know, in the agriculture, unfortunately, the farmers are not the ones that that get rich. It's the branders, it's the marketers, it's the distributors, and the product developers. And so we're going to focus on researching and developing innovative products that the consumers are going to really want to use, and develop them in a way that's in a really nice format. That means a nice packaging, and having the acumen where we want to be a profitable enterprise in the end, for our shareholders and for the sustainability for the consumers that we're going to serve. So we're very excited about the fact that we're not a company that's just out there trying to burn all the capital it has and make a lot of noise. I don't want to say slow and steady is going to win the race, but there's a steady a path that can be utilized here that's much less risk prone and much more sustainable.
You mentioned that you're debt free. That's remarkable, given so many companies, especially in this era of so-called easy money, and households and countries for that matter, are heavily indebted. So it's refreshing, frankly, to talk to someone who's walking a different path there. Something you just talked about. You just launched, went public yesterday, so people on our channel appreciate if we mention the date. So that would have been Thursday, July 12th, 2018, when you went public.
That's correct.
So that's awesome. And, good for you.
We're just out of the gates, and it takes a while to build your base, and I think it's an opportune time. Our company has positioned itself, especially at this onset, at a very reasonable valuation, I feel, to enable investors to come in and capture a real ground floor opportunity. And like I mentioned or alluded to, we've got very strong pipeline and very aggressive path to growth ahead, which will lead to sustainability in a lean method. So this will lend to profitability, and so I think we're offering investors a very rare opportunity to participate in a sector that's just burgeoning, and a team that's experienced. We've developed sustainable projects in the past, and we're bringing that acumen now to the cannabis sector, and very excited about what's to come, and hopefully your viewers will agree.
You mentioned a strong cash position at the outset here. Do you anticipate the need as you grow, as you say, slow and steady, or maybe not so slow, the need to raise additional capital, and if so, for what purpose?
Absolutely. We will look to raise as much capital as we can this year. There's a sort of a bit of a formula some of the others have used that we do need to employ to build our share strength, and that means adding assets. So Pure Global is the parent company akin to Kronos or Canopy, and Pure Sense Inc. actually is our first operating company, which is a licensed entity that will be selling medical products to the Canadian market and exporting as well. But Pure Global looks to add many other assets, and we're looking at a number of pieces right now, which we're very excited about. So we'll be raising funds for both organic expansion. We've just added 20,000 square feet to our original 20,000 square feet, so making it about 43 now. We're also looking at more expansion sites. We've strategically placed ourselves in the middle of an industrial park, so we have about 400,000 square feet of expansion capability around us, depending on how we want to cut that and pursue that. Also through acquisitions, there's going to be several hundred candidates that are coming down the pipeline that don't have the capitalization or don't have the wherewithal to operate the businesses or looking to get out, if you will. So we'll be able to capture increased square footage through low cost acquisitions such as that. So we're going to put our money to work for the right reasons to allow for maximum shareholder value growth.
So I always give all of our guests a chance to kind of give us a final thought or a final word, and if there's any question that I haven't asked that you think is relevant for our people to be more educated and informed and aware about the prospects of this market, the industry, your company, what would you have to share with them?
I would share with your viewers that this is an opportune time to get in relatively early in a sector that's really the beginning of a large wave. And we always want to catch the wave very early on. The dot-com came and went, and some may even compare this to the dot-com days and may even call this a bubble. But this is actually based on hard product. This is a product that's being sold. It's actually already being sold in the black market. What's happening is it's shifting to a regulated market. What's nice about it is that you don't need to educate the population on it. For example, if I develop the new software, you have to go educate the population. This already exists. The market already exists. It's just shifting to a regulated space. And it's not hypothetical numbers like dot-coms were based on. These are based on hard numbers in terms of patient volumes, grams produced, how much capacity you have, and those are the metrics that are being utilized. And the figures you're seeing now and some of the valuations might seem lofty, but it's because that the industry is such an early stage, and the opportunity is so vast, especially internationally speaking, for especially Canadian companies like us, that it would behoove investors to really take the opportunity while it's there. And although you hear about some of our peers much more, the Canopies, the Afrias, the Auroras, they tell very good stories, and they're out there, and they're already sort of at 50,000 square feet. So the opportunity that investors have for us in Pure right now is really getting in at the ground floor and really benefiting from the growth that we're anticipating ahead. And before we touch wood, join the ranks of some of our peers.
So we have been speaking, everyone, with Malay Panchal. He is the CEO of Pure Global Cannabis, Inc. And again, I wanted to mention that free research report that anybody wants to go to futuremoneytrends.com/pure, P-U-R-E. You can download a free information report and make your own informed choices about an up-and-coming promising company in this growing sector. It's an exciting time, really, for us, because as we in our Healing Yourself.life channel are trying to help people to realize how empowered they can be to branch out on their options and not just rely on, for example, strictly big pharma with patented medicine that may bring high risks and side effects, that sort of thing. We've certainly all seen the TV ads with all the lists of scary side effects, so it's really refreshing. And one thought I would like to leave with people is, you mentioned a couple of times, Malay, is do a little bit of research on how the human body seems to have developed with a symbiotic receptivity to cannabis. Our eyes are being opened with the CBD oil usage that we've started for treatment of chronic Lyme, and it just seems to be wise to look into something that's been used for thousands of years and that seems to be such a good match for the human physiology. So, Malay, thank you so much for joining us here on HealingYourself.life and Reluctant Preppers.
Then again, thank you for having me. Look forward to speaking to you again.